Dear Mr. X, my name is Tim. A while back I left a comment on one of your videos about an encounter I had, and you asked me to elaborate. Here's a bit more detail for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as I have no good explanation as to what my friends and I saw. I've spent most of my life in southwest Missouri, specifically in the Ozarks. It's a quiet area with very little in the way of excitement. Most people outside of Springfield and its suburbs live in small towns full of farms and maybe a single traffic light if you're lucky. In the late 90s, I was a high school kid, one of a close-knit group who often went out in search of adventure anywhere we could manage to find it. I know a lot of these kinds of places carry whispers of strange creatures out in isolated woods, but I'm here to tell you that sometimes it is for good reason. My friends and I were always fascinated by the stories but never really thought we would one day be a part of one. All the names in this story have been changed for the sake of protecting my friends' identities. My best friend, Dave, along with some other friends, Josh, Bill, and Louie, all lived in one of those dusty farm towns just a few miles northeast of a place called Crane, Missouri. Crane was surrounded by dense woods, which made it feel really creepy even during the day. Whenever I visited there, it felt like being trapped in some sort of twilight zone, blocked off from the real world. We'd heard stories about a hollow in the woods, in Crane, where people encountered something they claimed was not of this world. The stories were pretty vague, but all that did was feed our adolescent curiosity. As soon as we heard about it, we all gave each other that look that said, "Oh man, we are definitely going to check this out." Josh was the only one of us with a car, so one afternoon we grabbed some snacks, a few rifles and shotguns, piled into Josh's truck and headed southwest. Before long we got to the area where we were told the hollow was, and parked in a dusty cutout along the road. We got a much later start than we originally planned, but we were all too high on the testosterone, adrenaline, and excitement for the diversion to care. As we set out into the woods, Dave and I took point as we were the most familiar with navigating the trickier parts of the terrain there. About 20 minutes into the trek, we found what we believed to be the hollow mentioned in the stories. It was in a beautiful clearing tucked away in the recesses of the forest. We took in the scenery a bit as we wandered around, looking for any signs of something extraordinary when Dave stopped and looked at me, causing the rest of us to freeze as well. Without him saying it, I could tell by the look on his face what he had just realized. His ears perked up. His eyes were squinting slightly as they looked around. His brows furrowed a bit, and he appeared to be unconsciously holding his breath. The area was way too quiet. "Hey Tim, do you remember hearing birds or anything on our way here?" I replied in a whisper. "It's been a while, bro. Maybe not since we got to the clearing." The woods were silent. That level of silence that feels like wet cloth being stuffed into your ears. It was oppressive. That was when all hell broke loose. Bill started swearing right before I heard a blast from his shotgun turn the silence into a hellscape of noise. He came running from the direction of the hollow and blew past us, yelling at us to get away. As the ringing in my ears subsided, I could hear snarling coming from behind him. The sun was starting to dip below the forest canopy, and we were losing light already. We couldn't see what it was at first, but we could definitely hear it. When it finally did emerge from the brush, man, to this day I wonder if what I saw was true. I question my own perceptions. The creature was like a wolf or a dog, but by far the biggest one I'd ever seen. It was so large that I doubt even a black bear would have stood a chance against it in a fight. It had long, dark fur, yellowish eyes and teeth. I still shiver whenever the thought of it crosses my mind. I remember thinking that if that thing catches us, one of us is done for sure. We raised our weapons and began firing at the beast. I'd never heard so many guns going off at once. It was deafening, but none of us seemed to care at the time. If I could bet on it, I would wager that almost every round we fire actually hit its mark, but whatever it was, the creature wasn't fazed at all. It just kept stalking towards us with those terrifying yellow eyes glancing between us. It never even flinched. "Run!" someone shouted. I didn't know who it was, probably Dave. When I started running, it was like the rest of the world just fell into blackness, and all that existed were my legs, the ground beneath my feet, and the monster that pursued me. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my ears. We made it back to the truck intact somehow. When I got clear of the woods, I noticed the other guys popping out in different areas. We each took a different path, which probably helped us avoid getting caught. Half of us dove into the bed of the truck as Josh threw himself into the driver's seat and started the engine. We were all breathing heavily with shock written all over our faces, but the feeling of slight relief was upon us. As the truck began to pull onto the road, my heart shot up to my throat. A huge mass of black fur careened out of the woods, hurtling over the road and smashing into the trees on the opposite side. It was like the incarnation of pure rage, as it righted itself and began galloping towards us, kicking up dust, large rocks and chunks of dirt as it came. It was like watching a movie in slow motion. Josh pushed his truck as hard as he could, but the crazed hound was gaining on us, behind and slightly to the right. It cocked its body downward before launching itself into the rear passenger side tire like a missile. I heard the screech of its teeth sinking into the fender. The truck jerked violently as Josh struggled to maintain control. The creature's fangs gouged and scraped at the metal before it let go and slowed to a trot, apparently giving up the chase. It wasn't long before we made it back to Josh's house, and we all got out to inspect the damage. The area that was bitten showed deep indentations and areas where the metal was completely sheared through. You should know that the vehicle I'm talking about in this story is a 1973 Chevrolet, not one of those cheap plastic or aluminum cans they make today. I don't think any one of us went home with clean underwear that night, if you know what I mean. The creature, it was gigantic, at least twice as big as any wolf I've ever seen. If it weren't for the distinct head, ears, and overall build of a wolf, I would have mistaken it for a bear. I can still smell the woods as they were that night, hear my heart pounding, feel my stomach churning whenever I think about it. I got to a point in the bed of that truck where I was literally waiting for my time to die, and I haven't gone back to Crane since that day. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I'm afraid to go back. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope you found it interesting at least. It's been a long time since I thought about it in such detail, and it's almost as clear and vivid today as it was back then. I guess some experiences never truly leave us, do they? Have a wonderful day, Mr. X. Sincerely, Tim.
My name is Fauna, and I think I have a story that might interest you. This all started a while ago, 2 years ago to be precise. My family had just moved from the east coast of Florida to North Carolina. The house we moved into was a rental on the outskirts of a suburban neighborhood. Being on the outer rim of the residential area, our house was bordered by woods. The plan was to stay there until we found a property my parents could buy. I was feeling inspired by the beautiful new area we'd settled in, so I took up the hobby of drawing landscapes. One evening, as I sat on my back porch, sketching away on my drawing pad, something caught my eye. I looked up for a moment, and my heart skipped a beat. Something locked eyes with me for a split second, before vanishing back into the forest. It was so fast, I wasn't sure if it was ever there at all. Because of that fact, I was fully content with writing it off as my own imagination playing tricks on me. However, about a week or two later, I was on a walk through the woods, as I often did, following deer trails and enjoying the natural scenery, when I saw something else. This time, it was the carcass of a large buck. It was an extremely muggy and hot day, but I noticed the body didn't smell, leading me to assume that it had been killed recently. I didn't think of it too much, because I knew that there were coyotes in the area. I figured maybe I'd just scared them away from their kill. The only thing that didn't quite sit well with me was how large the buck was. It didn't seem like the kind of prey a coyote would usually be able to take down. After all, I wasn't aware of any large packs of coyotes in the woods behind my house. After that, everything was normal for a while. I would venture out into the woods every day, find a spot to sit and draw in for hours, sketching the beautiful scenery. One day, while doing just that, I heard someone very distinctly call out to me. At first, I thought it was in my head, but then I heard it again. I didn't recognize the voice. After the second time, I immediately bolted up and made a beeline for my house, leaving the drawing unfinished. After that day, things only got worse. I would still go on my daily walks, but without the extended drawing sessions. I would find dead squirrels and birds littering the paths I took. Being a bit of a skeptic, as you could probably tell, I chalked it up a few times to coincidence. However, this happened for over 2 weeks straight, before I eventually got tired of changing my routine to avoid finding dozens of tiny rotting corpses in the woods. I took about a 6-month break from walking in the forest, and one day I worked up the courage to go back there again, and everything was fine for a while. That wouldn't be the case for a few weeks later, when I went into the woods with my younger sister and 2 friends. One of us stumbled upon a path that was somewhat hidden. You had to squeeze past a thick bush to reveal it, and it was a very clearly well-travelled down track that went about 100 meters, winding into the forest. Of course, we wanted to see where it led to, myself more than anyone, and after about 5 minutes of walking down the path, I started to feel off. Not scared, just that there was something wrong. I then heard a voice that made all the warmth drain from my skin. I don't know what it was about these 2 words that horrified me so much, but that is exactly how I felt.
Too far.
I didn't know if it was a warning or a threat, or even my imagination, but I told everyone to stop talking. The others all stopped in their tracks, unsure of how scared they should be. There was a soft, cautious crack of a twig from somewhere in the woods, and that alone was enough to send everyone running back up the path. It was so narrow, we had to run in a single file line, which made it even more nerve-wracking. I ran in the back with my little sister in front. As we were nearing the entrance to the path, I turned back and once again locked eyes with something that seemed to vanish immediately, just like it did the first time I saw it. I wish I could describe it to you, but all I know is that I looked into something's eyes and then it was gone. This is the reason why I often get the urge to look over my shoulder. I feel like it might be watching me, even though I've left the forest behind.
Fauna.
Thanks for listening. Sincerely, Fauna.
Greetings, my friends. And here we have yet another set of allegedly true encounters with unknown cryptids. I certainly have a few words to say about each of these stories, but first, let me give a big thanks and shout out to my guest today, the renowned Mortis Media, for lending his awesome talents to this production. He and I have been meaning to work together for a little while now, and we have to thank one of our mutual subscribers, Amzikins, a dear friend and fellow dreamer, for actually reaching out and getting the ball rolling on this. So thank you very much, my dear. You did good. I also have a somewhat longer form collaboration with Mortis Media over on his channel. There'll be a link in the description down below. So please make sure you go check that one out after you're done with this video. If you like what you hear over there, be sure to subscribe and let him know that I sent you. And by the way, if this is your first video of mine, welcome, my friend, to the Dreamers. If you like what you hear, stick around and subscribe. Don't forget to let me know what you thought of these stories in the comment section down below. So now for my commentary. First up we have Tim's story. His harrowing tale of what appeared to be a giant wolf of some sort in the woods of Missouri. I found many elements of this account to be authentic and exciting to picture in my mind as I wrote it out, and this story is among the most plausible encounters I've received. I asked Tim in a follow-up email, while I was thinking about writing the script based on my interview with him, if it was possible for him to obtain pictures of the mangled truck, if he didn't have any already. He explained that he didn't have any, but that Josh's family tended to never throw things away, and that they probably still had that old 1973 Chevy truck parked somewhere on their farmland. If he ever was able to get his hands on a picture of that vehicle, I'd really be interested in seeing what type of damage was done. He said it was there last time he visited, which was 16 years ago in 2002, but that he's since lost touch with most of the people that were with him there that night. I certainly know how that goes. As far as the creature itself, I wondered if it could have been perhaps some type of remnant species of dire wolf, or even just a wolf with an unusually high amount of dire wolf DNA in his ancestry. It's awesome to think that such large wolves used to walk this earth naturally at some point in the past. Whatever this was, Tim was pretty clear in the fact that he perceived it as some kind of canine creature. Regarding Fauna's story, which was the one read by Mortis Media, though it wasn't so much of a heart-pounding thriller, didn't have a big flashy chase scene or anything, I found it very disturbing if you put yourself in Fauna's shoes, which is the approach that I suggest you take with all these types of stories. Imagine walking the trails of a beautiful forest, and I know North Carolina has great scenery, but having that experience be marred by the dead bodies of countless innocent creatures, it really seemed like something was messing with her. Perhaps it was even willing to leave her be and let her enjoy the woods, provided she never went too far. In an odd way, I think I know what she meant by saying she would lock eyes with whatever it was there in the woods, but that it would seemingly vanish at the same instant. And that's how I drew the background art and the thumbnail for this video. Just basically a pair of crazy looking eyes, disembodied, just floating in midair and partway through the act of vanishing into nothingness. That's kind of the way that I envisioned it. I wonder if it was a creature perhaps that was just that fast, or if there was something more mysterious at play for it to be able to achieve that effect on her perception. The whole ordeal reminded me very much of the laughing creature I spoke about in an unknown Cryptids video from way back when on my channel. And if you don't remember, that was a creature that was also in the woods, as many of these are, but it seemed to have the ability to slip in and out of our dimension at will. A very, very interesting concept indeed, in my opinion. Now, a word before I let you go, my friends. As you all know, I only put forth cryptid stories on this channel that my subscribers tell me about via email, and then we kind of go back and forth, and I then write a script based on that. But I only do stories in that manner that people claim to be true. Now, I cannot verify their truth, nor am I overly judgmental or critical of the information these dreamers share with me, unless it's blatantly, obviously false. However, if you hear a story on here, which I've gone to the trouble of writing, editing, producing, rendering, and posting, you should know that it's one that I find at least compelling, thought-provoking, and entertaining, but also that the person it originated from believes it to be true. If I feel like somebody's blatantly lying to me, and I'm pretty good at deciphering that, then I simply won't do the story. But if I at least feel like they are being authentic, I don't mind calling it a true story because to them it is true. So I've been getting a lot of comments from people saying that this or that story is fake and shouldn't be labeled as true, but I think some people are just thinking a bit too hard about these things. When you watch or listen to a video or story on my channel, I want you to do 3 things. Enjoy yourself, open your mind, and use your imagination. Think about and discuss these fascinating concepts and ideas, rather than trying to become an amateur investigative journalist. But hey, if your passion is watching and calling out cryptid stories on YouTube, I fully support that too. You dreamers know I'm always there for you, as long as you put some respect on my name. Just kidding. You know I love you all. Anyway, my friends, I hope this message finds you well. Go forth into the world and be the best human beings you can be. Until next time, my friends, I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. And by the way, I feel so bad for those little dead critters in the forest. Today's code word is critters. Use it in a comment down below, so I can see you. Love you all. Later.